All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Hi, Sharon. Good to see you. All right. So we're in a really what I consider a really great section of the meditation chapter because it's giving all the explanations of what to do when you have problems in meditation. And you know, in some ways it sometimes feels very linear where we have problem one, which is you don't meditate and then you start meditating. Problem two is you get into forgetting the object. Then problem three is, what's problem three again?
Dullness and agitation.
Correct. Then you get into dullness and agitation. But the solution to dullness and agitation is actually in problem four. Because once you learn to recognize what those things are and how they're affecting your mind, then you learn how to play with it. You learn to have this capacity to check in with yourself. It's basically self check-in time, right? It's Jingwa Tang Gupa. You forgot the wa, Anastasia. You either say Jinga or you say Jingwa Tang Gupa. I mean, there's different ways of saying it, but I'm just being a pain in the butt. You learn this ability to, it's like, when kids are having an emotion, if you have children or you work with children, like, and they're just completely losing it. And you're like, hey, how are you feeling? And then all of a sudden, you're asking them how to check in with themselves. What's going on? Like, why are you upset? Right. And you get them to use their words, explain why they're crying. Right. And then that's just the check-in part. Then you have to do something, right? You have to do something once you check in. Like, all right, so I'm feeling agitation, or I'm feeling dullness, or you know, but that's a weird word to say, like I'm feeling dull or I'm feeling agitated. It's more like is the mind busy? Is the mind about to move? Is the mind bright and bushy-tailed, or is it somewhat not as bright as it could be? So you have to learn to check in while you're doing your meditation. Oh, well, okay, Tim, if you're telling me to meditate on one object, but then you're telling me to check in from time to time to see what the quality of that meditation is, then am I not having single pointed focus? Right. So then you're like, well, then you're telling me to do contradictory things. Yes, I am. Because at this stage of meditation, you have to move off you have to like somehow release your attempts at single pointed focus to be able to check in with yourself to see what is the quality of your mind to be able to adjust for it, so then you can have better quality single pointed focus. Okay, so what you end up doing is you get really good at checking in, and even possibly having part of your mind utilize the energy to check in while you're still somewhat focused on the object. It's kind of hard to awareness, right? So you have your attention is on the object, your lama's eyes, or your teacher's eyes, or your, whatever the meditation object is, right? And then there's like a general awareness mind that's looking around. Now, can you have general awareness and attention at the same time? Different people will argue different things. Can a part of your mind be focused on one thing and a part of your mind focus on something else? I mean, we can have a debate about it, but I would say that there is a quality of the mind that can be generally aware, and then a quality of the mind that's super focused. Why do we want that awareness? Well, we want to be checking to understand the quality of our focus, the quality of our attention. And over time, that general awareness has to go away eventually. You remove your senses start to withdraw. You have what we call in Sanskrit pratyahara. And then you become more and more single focused on one thing with bright-eyed, bushy-tailed intensity, clarity, right? All of those things are together. But you can arrive at shamatha, at a type of shamatha, a type of single pointed focus that doesn't have intensity. It's just kind of dull. And that's the greatest obstacle to meditation. Geshe is that general awareness, yes. Kind of. So try to think about it that way. Like you have a general awareness and then you have a focus. And in that general awareness, which would be like, I don't know, you have your air conditioning on while you're meditating. As long as it's not making stupid noises, it's not really distracting. Like if it's rhythmic, like or like a fan in the room, the fan is just running in the background, like white noise. Can you have a general awareness and then also have a focus? Most of the energy, if 100% of your mind's energy is on focus, you're going to miss the adjustments you need in the beginning. So maybe it's 50% focus, 50% station, or 50%, 75-20. Like you can kind of play with it enough to say, check in every once in a while to say, oh, what's going on? What is the quality of my mind? Improving the quality of the mind will improve the quality of the meditation, will improve the quality of the realizations that happen, right? Because eventually you can bring all of that in and then keep it there. And it just stays. No effort at all, but we'll get to that. All right, that's where we are in our discussion. So here we go. You guys can see that. Let me make this a little bit smaller. 131. All right. We need a reader. How about Christian? Are you translating? Nope. Therefore, you can read.
The young dream drug na Godpa Kewar Gurwe Dream God Puran Porja Te Chomdan Da Ki Kyang Pi Wa Gi Gyud Kudha Chang Dream Drag Padang Lod Drag Pa Mayin Par Dream Lod Ranpai San Ne Khad Nyan Pa Chung War Sung Patar.
Good. Nice job. So where were we so we can understand what's happening? We were talking about subtle dullness. And subtle dullness is a state where the mind is just slightly depressed, right? we have clarity of fixation. We have clarity and fixation, but we don't have the word we talked a little bit about is like momentum or intensity. It's somewhat dropped. Like the intensity is just slightly off. Like when you walk into a room that's slightly too bright and you're like, and your eyes kind of go, ah, and you just go over to the wall and you turn down the light switch. Like if you have one of those adjustable light switches, just turn that intensity. You go, oh, it's so much nicer in here, right? And that's the danger of subtle dullness, is you go, oh, it's just so much nicer, because you relax a little bit, right? And you should be relaxed in meditation, and you shouldn't be putting too much energy into it. But there's this balance, like samapati, like balanced meditation, because you're just taking that intensity down. It feels good, but it's not going to push you through. So that intensity or the momentum, I like the word momentum. This is actually the Geshe Michael translation describing nar, like it's the momentum has withdrawn a bit. Okay. He uses intensity too. Okay. So the solution we just got was we have to, the idea is how tightly we're holding onto the object. And the word we used last week was tune up, like turn it up just a little bit, not a lot, but turn it up just a little bit. Okay. Now we've recognized we have subtle dullness. Yay. And the only way to, frankly, everyone, the only way to do this, to know what the hell I'm talking about, is to do it, is to practice. If you don't do it yourself, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But on the other side of it, this is the roadmap. So you go into your next retreat, or you're meditating every day, and all of a sudden you go, oh, that's what he was talking about. You'll make adjustments and you'll go, oh, that's what the text was talking about. Like the experience is in the words, right? Like you have the experience that the words describe. So now that we've turned up the meditation, we've tuned it up to kind of bring us out of dullness. First thing he says is, if we tighten down too much, if we put too much effort onto it, gopa kewar, agitation, girpa, girwa, will arise. So if you put too much in the system, then we will start erring towards the side of mental agitation. So what must we do? Therefore, we must trimla, we must find the balance, renpo, a balance between trim, too tight, or la, which is too low. So you're trying to find that balance between tightening up too much and loosening up too much. What is the balance of loosening and tightening, right? And so this becomes the game. Like, oh, did too much, back down. Oh, back down too much, got to go up, right? And unfortunately, folks, every day will be slightly different. Depending on the quality of other factors, like how much you slept the night before or how irritated you got before your meditation, at yourself or at others, will then determine how you're going to find this balance. And so you need to be able to find a way to get yourself consistently into a state where you can recognize where you are. If you have too much agitation, how do you get that place where then you're getting back to that balance, that Rempo? All right. So Here's an example. The conqueror, Chomdende Ki, the conqueror, going all the way to the end here, Sungpa said, the conqueror made some notes, like noted to us, right? That, so this word here, piwam, and I couldn't find it. I mean, I know what the word means out of context, but I couldn't find the Sanskrit for it. And I did all this research and I couldn't find a picture, but it's a guitar. All right. It's a type of guitar, a kind of lute or something like that. I couldn't find a picture. So unfortunately, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but we're talking about a guitar. All right. So when the sweet sound, the Kenyan, right? The sweet sound arises from the guitar. Okay. This is why this language is challenging, because you have to jump around the sentence. Well, I'm sure a Tibetan would be like English is difficult or German is difficult, right? But so the conqueror said, a guitar, when the sweet sound, that when we get the sweet sound of a guitar, okay, that we know that there's a balance. Here it is again, Rempa, right? There's a balance of not too tight, not too loose, right? We find a balance. And the word they used here is sam. And this is also the word samto, is also the word that we use for boundary, like a boundary marker of a retreat. So he's using this word to talk about the boundary, the line between too tight and too loose, right? When we find that boundary, we find that line, that balance, right? When the tension is just right on the string, right? It's not too tight and it's not too loose, right? It's not stretched too tightly, nor is it released too loosely, right? Mayan. So if you can imagine your meditation being like a guitar string, to get that correct, that beautiful sound that comes out of the instrument, you have to find that sum. You have to find that boundary, that border, that balance, okay? Where if it's too tight or if it's too loose, you're not, well, first of all, you're not going to be in tune, right? But there's also a thing about the quality of the strings, right? And if you're a guitar player, you know that there's different strings have different qualities to them. And so finding the most beautiful strings that then create the most amazing sounds, the Kenyans, right? That's what every guitar player hopes to find with, and then there's a game of like too tight and too loose, the facility of playing the music, but we're done with the metaphor. All right. But you have to think about that in your meditation. Like, am I the sweet sound of my meditation? And then you have to check, is it sweet? And what Pabonka Rinpoche said beforehand is that you probably will get confused and think it's sweet, but you're in subtle dullness. So what you have to constantly be doing is tuning up the meditation. And this is what, I remember one time I was sitting with Geshe Michael, and it was at exactly this point. It was a group of us who were sitting in a retreat in Prescott, Arizona. And I was telling him, I was saying, look, I feel like my meditation is, I'm constantly agitated. Like I'm constantly like moving around and I can't slow that down. And he said, well, describe it more. And I told him more about what was going on. And, I was having these meditations that were more like slow movies. And, you know, I was analyzing objects or I was analyzing stories, and the movie was it kind of kept, I don't know, I can't describe it very well. But it is this feeling that I was experiencing it as agitation. I was experiencing like, no, I should be focused on one thing. I should be focused here. But I'm kind of like wandering a little bit. And so I was applying what this says, and, you know, you're wandering mind, you're having agitation, you need to bring it down. So I was bringing it down, and we're going to learn how to do that in a couple paragraphs. But then he said, no, that's subtle dullness. He said, you suffer from subtle dullness, right? And I was like, again, it was one of those things where it was just so in left field that I didn't know what to do with it. But then I was like, oh, subtle dullness can look like agitation, because I'm just sort of dreaming. It's not very bright. It's not, there isn't an intensity to it. There's not a lot of momentum. And so what I learned was, oh, I'm applying the wrong fix. I was making myself duller and duller by bringing my mind down and down and down, more and more down. But rather what you do is you start turning it up, you know, just a little bit. It's like, you know, turning the air conditioning up in the car, like, you know, back in the old days when it wasn't digital, right? Like you had the little knob, right? So you just, you know, and every car has its own personality. Like if you say, hey, turn that up, and they turn it 3 notches, and you're like, no, it's going to be too fucking cold. Excuse me. Right. So I'm just imagining, you know, back in high school, you know, and like you turn it up too much and then it's too cold in the room or in the car. So it's the same thing. Like you you just tune it up a little bit and wait, what's happening? Like, okay, tune it up a little bit, turn it up just a little bit more, and then you wait. You turn it up a little bit more, and then you wait. Until you have this feeling, is what we're talking about here, is that if you put too much effort in, wait, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not on the screen anymore. If you put too much effort in, you will, the beginnings of mental agitation will start. So then you have to start recognizing when you turned it up too much that you're now moving into agitation. So if you thought you were in agitation and you were turning it down and it keeps going, you're probably in dullness. So then you turn it up until you go on the other side. Like you basically overcorrect to find that balance. All right, here we go. Let's see what he says in 132. How about Mike Hoffman?
Thanks. Ditar jena gupa kewar duk nyampa le chunglo. Ditsam le jingwa kewar duk nyampa le chungdrim parjega.
Nice. All right, so to actually do this, when you actually do this, ditar chena, right? When your mind, so so when you think, okay, when you think, and this duk is colloquial actually, so we're not really even in scriptural. It's a colloquial for you, okay? When you think, right? When you're thinking that agitation has started, gupa kewar, you learn to let up a little bit. Chung is let up a little bit. You learn that when you feel agitation starting, just starting, you let up just a little bit. And in the same way, when you think that dullness has started, you must tighten down just a little bit. Chungja, right? So as you see, like it's just like just little knobs up and down, right? Until you find that balance. And you only will find that when you're actually in meditation itself. All right, Kristen, could you read 133, please?
Okay, I'm trying. It's hard after Mike because he did such a good job. Dini ki samde yam yong la be che nekar te sheshin. Is that the word for sheshin?
Correct. That is the word for shape.
Yang po ma tak na ha changjo da ne
Away.
dawe na ne lo pong chandra go mi yang
Kyang.
kyang.
Okay. So he just said literally what I just said. He said, when you find the balance between the two, like the balance, the sum, that marker, that boundary, the boundary marker of your retreat. When you set up a boundary marker for a retreat, you don't go beyond it, period. There's a power to saying, I'm going to stay within these walls. And if you're doing your retreats for the first time, make it big. Make it a big wall, like make your boundaries big, and then you can slowly make them smaller and smaller. But if you're like me and you need to get outside and walk to keep the energy down, make your boundaries large. Anyhow, so the boundary between the two, right, that sum of the two must come from experience, nam yong, direct experience. You need to learn by doing hours and hours on the cushion. That's it. Sorry. Like, it's like getting to know yourself. You have to do that work over and over. You have to just experience it. So sorry, you have to be a meditator. I'm sorry, you're in problem 3 and 4. I'm sorry. So he also says it can be very difficult. Kawa is difficult, right? If you're not able, you're not able to analyze. Matak is not analyze, but also we're kind of basically saying, if you don't have this sheshin, and we call it changpo. Changpo means clever. It's a cool word in Tibetan, pangpo. So you need to have a clever sheshin. Your watchfulness has to be better than your tendency to be lazy. All right. We all have tendencies to create, how do I say this? We're really good at fooling ourselves. I'm such a high spiritual practitioner. I was listening the other day at a cafe to 3 people sitting across from me. And they were talking the spiritual Sedona talk. They were like, my guides told me to do this. My childhood trauma, I can't do that because my childhood trauma came up and I was triggered. But my guides told me to go in this direction. I was like, I'm not making fun of childhood trauma, and I'm not making fun of people who can, talk to spirits that we can't see. Not what I'm saying. Okay. What I'm saying is their minds were cleverly keeping themselves in their childhood trauma and not having to do something about it. Right? They had such a beautiful rhetoric around and such awareness of the things they grew up with and the challenges that they had and the difficulties that created the worlds that they had. And they're so good at saying, well, that comes from that. They're very good at it, but they weren't doing a damn thing about it in the conversation. I was listening because it was irritating. I was trying to get some work done, and all I could hear was this sort of annoying Sedona voice in my background. And all I was waiting for is like, which one of them is going to say how much they've overcome it, how much work they're doing to like not fool themselves into thinking that they were some high practitioner, but they were actually doing the work, and they weren't. And that's human nature. Like this is kind of an extreme of it, but it's human nature. It's human nature to utilize these things as ways to justify not changing. So this is why you need to have Sheishen Pangpo. You need to have a clever Sheishen that can bust through your tendency to not want to change. Even if, we were talking about in the last class, even if you can speak Majjhimika, oh, nothing is coming from itself. Everything is coming from me. You can do all this stuff, but you can use it as a justification to then stay stuck in the thoughts that things are actually coming from themselves. You perceive that they are coming from themselves, rather. So this is why you need the watchman, the watch person, the watch lady, whatever you want to call them, the alarm clock. I got a brand new alarm clock today, actually. It's called a Zen alarm clock. It's really beautiful. Bought it on eBay. Just came in this morning. Get the alarm clock to get you up, get you out of your slumber of not wanting to change, right? And Pamonka Rinpoche even says it's difficult. It's difficult to do this. So rise up to the challenge, develop your awareness, your clever awareness that can tell you when you're being, in English, there's a word we call it. We call that spiritual bypassing. Like you're doing your spirituality so you can justify your own inability to be spiritual. Something like that. And we all do it. So don't get in your spiritual high horse of how you're not spiritually bypassing while you're bypassing being a spiritual bypasser. Anyway, so sorry, translators. I'm watching you and realizing I'm in a special mindset now. All right. So he says it's difficult. You have to develop the capacity to watch it and then do something about it. And then Master Chandragomi said, and so down here it says, this is where the quote is. So by the way, if anyone cares, I'm going to show you something. Okay. Right. This is what the text looks like when you're reading it on the paper, right? What we do in the Diamond Cutter Classics and Mixed Nuts is we actually make it easier on the reader, right? So we'd have there's indicators here of what the quote is, but we know he's talking. And then down here it says the She, which means that was what was said, right? So then everything in between is some kind of quote. So what we're going to do, so we do this formatting for the readers. Okay, we put verse numbers as well, so you can reference them easier in the future. That's not what it looks like on the paper. And actually it doesn't even look like that on the paper. It looks like the Tibetan script. So anyhow, that was all for shits and giggles. So Master Chandragomi said, and there's this kind of cool expression down here, Tuk Nawa. And it's kind of like Tuk Nal is kind of meaning fatigue. But the way that he kind of says this in a way like like exasperation, like he's just like finally, you know, like the word that another word. So what was it? What do you use here? Hold on. What did we use earlier? Hold on. Tangible exasperation. Okay. He's basically sort of like at his wit's end, that he's just like, this is the main problem of meditation. If you get here, this is where you need to struggle. This is what you're going to have to do. So he's basically saying, just get used to it. All right. So he's basically saying every time I make efforts, sumpa denpa, agitation shows up. And when I try to eliminate agitation, depangna, shit. This word ni should be represented by shit. Like, damn it. Like, it's not what the word means, but like the feeling of this is when I make efforts, agitation arises. But when I try to get rid of that agitation, damn it, dullness arises. Okay. So he's kind of like, when you do one thing, the other thing happens. When you do the other thing happens. So you're constantly balanced, like you're constantly overshooting the mark. You can't hit the bullseye. You're always like somewhere else. And he's like, it's so difficult to even know what the heck is going on, right? To reach that balanced meditation. Okay. He keeps making these adjustments, but he's like, I can't even tell what the heck is going on here. And he finishes like, what, as a question, like, what am I supposed to do with this mind that's all jumbled up? And he's basically like, guys, I'm a master. I'm considered a master. This is what Chandra Gomi said. Like, well, we call him a master, right? He probably didn't call himself a master. And he's like, I'm always screwing this up. What am I supposed to do with my screwed up mind? It's either too dull or it's too agitated. I can't find the balance in there. Right? Tuk niao. Tuk also means heart. It also means exalted. Niao by itself, sorry. Niao by itself means kind of like tired. So tuk niao, like tired exaltation. That's what that means? Let's see what happened to my notes. Here you go. All right. 135. Here we go. How about, let's see who wants to read. How about, oh yeah, how about Mylan? Milen, is that how you say your name? They're recording Vietnamese. She's not paying attention. Okay, we'll move on to somebody else. Everyone's turning off their cameras. Good job, guys. Love how you're running away. Yeah.
Hello. Hi.
Oh, hi.
Sorry.
Okay, let's go. Let's read 135.
Yes. On kian rai nang ne nang mi thang no way ra chung na ngô xin ca che nhen che hòa xin jin hòa nhi tin xin thang no pe no way kiang chung nhen che we na rim pa nhi she thủ thôn ngờ.
Good. Nice. Excellent job. Thank you. Good job. Okay. So this is a fun sentence. Let's see, how do I want to start this? You have to learn to identify who the enemy is. Draw. All right. Who is that enemy? And the problem is that we're oftentimes going to mistake the enemy. Draw Norway. Norway draw. Okay. Make sure I get that right. Let me look at my notes here. Yes. We need to look for that enemy. But what we do is we recognize the enemy as part of our family, as part of our inner circle. So we're trying to find the enemy, but we don't recognize that our enemy is within our family itself, within us. Okay? The enemy is within us, right? And so this danger, this mistaken danger, right? That where we mistake, the greatest danger, he says, the greatest danger is we mistake Qingwan Ni, dullness itself, for Tingling, Tingzhen, for meditation itself. So he's basically saying, and I've said it over and over again, and eventually you'll experience it directly yourself, is that you go looking for the enemy, but you can't find the enemy because you're looking in the wrong place. Because you think you're meditating. And it looks like meditation, feels like meditation, it's good. But it's not it. It's not it. Right? So there's a cool word here. Where is it? Yes, Saudundun, which means we have to get some skill. We have to start getting some skill at, or fluency, right? We have to get some kind of fluency at learning how to tighten down the mind properly. All right. So Pamonka is spending a long time on this particular point, and I'm spending a long time on this particular point because I suffered, and I still do at times suffer from this. Because all you want the meditation to be is good. I want it to be good today. Wow. And you whine about it, right? And so you find the place where it feels good and then you stop working. All right. Let's go to 136. Who's going to read 136? How about... He already read, and you're interpreting. How about Natalia Pashtutina? Can you read 136, Natasha?
Tetar semgrim dutan yanda dunsa chenkar shorna simjin pata bamtsin stanmi sa penam bunasmi sena bin bar brach baslepe in padun ma ninpola
Ningpole.
Impole Jumpa mipa grajenta tompe yanpa nindupe.
Okay, so hold on. Okay, so he's basically saying, now that you've kind of if you recognize that you have subtle dullness, if you recognize you have it, okay, and if you do something about it, if you then tighten down, okay, so then he says, if you tighten down in this way, right, if you tighten your mind down in this particular way, the problem is that there's a chance that you're going to decrease the intensity of your clarity. Which means that we no longer have a clarity that's holding well to the object. And so you're like, what the hell does that mean, Tim? Okay. What is that, what does that mean? And the honest thing is, you have to do it to experience it. As we said earlier, hours and hours on the cushion. Like, what does fixation mean? What does clarity mean? And what does that focus mean? Okay. Excuse me, clarity, fixation, clarity, and then intensity. Like, what do those things mean? Right? And you have to check it out, because a lot of it is, it's a state of mind, has nothing to do with the object itself. Although you're looking at the object and thinking the object is representative of the quality of your mind. So that if you have subtle dullness, right, and you tighten down to uplift it, that we actually go too far. So if we have fixation, clarity, intensity, right, we bring up the intensity. So let me just show you with the, okay, what he's saying is fixation comes first when you look at the object, okay, when you're focused on the object. Clarity is how clear is your mind when you're looking at it. And nar is the intensity of it, right? The momentum you have of watching it. And then if you reduce this, you fall into subtle dullness, okay? So now you're turning up the juice, like you're turning up the voltage. Chances are you're going to turn up the voltage too much that you go beyond intensity, you shoot beyond it, and then your clarity on that object begins to fade. What happens when the fading of that object happens? Some other object is starting to pop in. So kind of think of it like a, if you've ever worked with graphic design, or you've seen pictures where there's a fade through, like you're putting transparency on, like when you're making an art file or something, like you have different layers, like you have the base layer, you have the next thing, and then you put like an object on top, right? And what happens is that intensity, you've turned up the voltage too much, which then means that your intensity on the object begins to fade. You're still watching it, like, you're looking at a chair, right? Let's say a couch. And then in a meditation object, but then it becomes somewhat transparent. And then the other object behind the couch, like, I don't know, let's pretend there's a chair behind the couch that you couldn't see because the couch was really bright. Now that's beginning to become transparent, and then that chair is pushing through. So other objects are beginning to fade through the transparency level of your clarity. You may not be able to see what the other object is yet, because you still have fixation. You still focused on the couch, but it's beginning to fade a little bit. Like in Back to the Future, if you watch the movie, right? Marty McFly he's playing on the stage, and his body starts disappearing because the timeline is disappearing because his dad doesn't kiss his future wife in the dance, right? Timeline problem. And so he starts fading a little bit, right? The clarity, you can still see Marty McFly. We should really do a podcast on this shit. You can still see him, but he's beginning to fade a little bit, right? The next object has not come through. But if you keep turning up the voltage, that clarity will, the intensity is gone. Now that's the thing that becomes a challenge. The intensity, the nar, the brightness, the momentum is not the intensity of it's not the same intensity we're talking about right now. So as you increase the voltage, the clarity goes, and then your fixation, like the clarity on the object, and then the fixation goes, and boop, you're off to another object. You're thinking about dinner or lunch or the person who annoyed you yesterday, right? Marty McFly is no longer there. If you haven't seen Back to the Future, I am sorry I made a cultural reference, but go watch it. Next time you watch Back to the Future, you'll see it as a meditation movie. Find the Dharma everywhere. Yes, Julia gave a good example as well in the chat about TVs, right? Like you're trying to, before we had cable and all this other, digital things, you have like the antenna on top of the TV, and you have to like move the antenna to find the right angle to get the television signal, right? And if you get it perfect, the screen is excellent. But if you kind of move it a little bit, or a cloud comes through the sky, or someone sneezes, the intensity of the image goes down a little bit, right? And then eventually you lose the entire signal. That's a much more accessible example than Marty McFly for all of you. Thank you. All right. I hope that's helpful. All right, yay, we got through last week's class. Now we're going to start on this week's class. Yay. All right, 137. Let's have, who's here right now? Who would like to read? How about Julia, since you gave such a great example? I'll give you a short sentence here.
I'll try. What this is saying is that...
Oops, you're looking at my notes. Wrong thing. Oh, you're so funny. You're like, you're reading the English. I want you to read the Tibetan. What this is saying. There we go. Let's do the Tibetan.
Tarsam Nangdu Chu.
It's nang do do. Is it low tone or high tone? Nang do do. I think it's high tone.
Nang do do. She pai. Kyun yin pa. Ming pa. Yung sa.
Did it disappear?
Yung sa.
Trune.
Trune Jong.
Gom. Nice job. All right. So what this is saying, since you read the English, Shebadar, what that just said to us is that it becomes a problem, kunyimpa, if we bring our mind inside too tightly. Sem nangdudu. Okay. So so this is an interesting thing. What does it mean to bring the mind in too tightly if that's what we're trying to do? You got to figure it out in your own meditation. So the idea here is that if we go too far, we turn the voltage up too much, and we add too much. I just like the thing of voltage. We add too much voltage to your mind. Then the mind's like, oh my God, I got to think of something else. And it goes off onto another object, or it starts losing its clarity, right? So then what you need to do in your meditation is you need to spread it out. Tripa, just a little bit. You need to spread that out just a little bit. So what does that mean? Like spread it out just a little bit. You know, and there's different ways to do this. And I'm going to give you sort of how I'd like to work with it. Is that I'd like to work with elements of size. So if I'm focused on something and I need to increase the voltage, like, ooh, I think I might be in subtle dullness. Maybe I need to make the object bigger, or maybe I need to bring the object closer, right? And this is just from my experience. Like, it doesn't say to do this exactly, but the idea is there are some things you can do that are similar. But then you turn up the light in the room. Like if you're doing a golden room meditation, turn up the light, put more sunlight in, turn on the light switch, put more candles. I don't know, make your meditation cool. Turn up the light, right? So for me, sometimes it's make the object bigger. Or in this case where it says expand the mind, keep the object as big, but then make you bigger. So then the object kind of feels not as tightly held. So you can play with this like distance, like near, far, bright, dark. You yourself are large, you yourself are small. And this is actually, these are advices in meditation, not from this chapter specifically. But you work with different sizes, shapes, or like intensities. So then you can find that balance, right? And then what will happen in a meditation is that if your mind becomes so small and the object is so large, you might get tired of that, right? Or if the light is too bright, you're like, oh, this is getting too much. Where it was balanced 5 minutes ago, now the sun is a little bit too bright. So then you go, oh, Sheshin goes, oh shit, you're about to lose it. That's what my Sheshin does. It actually does this thing too. It starts shaking, right? So Sheshin goes, oh shit, you're about to lose it. Too much voltage, turn it down, right? And then you go, oh, now we're back to balance. And then, you know, your hormones change, or the cookie you ate an hour ago, the blood sugar starts dropping. I don't know, billions of things called seeds change. You know, your blood sugar drops, and then all of a sudden you become a little bit duller, right? And then Sheshin goes, whoa, hold on, guys. Hold on. Like make it a team. Did any of you see the movie Inside Out? There's like two movies, Inside Out 1, Inside Out 2. Go watch it. Excellent film. Because it personifies all of the emotions in our mind and gives them characters, and it's cute and funny and insightful. So I like to imagine that I have a team of people inside of me being like, go Tim, right? And then they're like, it's like a crowd of people, and like all of a sudden my blood sugar drops because I haven't had breakfast yet because I'm trying to meditate, and it's been an hour or something. My blood sugar starts dropping. I start getting a little tired or too much energy, whatever. And then the crowd goes, oh my God. It's like, oh shit, it's getting too quiet in here. It's getting a little dull. And then they start getting louder. They start cheering me on, right? Get back there, right? And you're like, oh, I got to wake up. And, and then I kind of bring myself back up. So you find these fun ways to increase the intensity or decrease the intensity, the voltage, right? Add more, take away more, and you're constantly, and even in a meditation itself, you find balance, but something will change and you have to rebalance, recalibrate. It's like a constant calibration. You are not the same person in any given instant. So of course you have to recalibrate. Last night's sleep sucked, so therefore you're dull. So now you're going to have to do all the things like splash water in your face to undullify your mind and recalibrate so then you can get into a good meditation. Cool. All right, we got, that's a nice place to end. What's today? Today's the 11th. All right, cool. All right, we will see you all next week. Thank you all for joining. I hope you all, please try, like go into your meditation and try. Like I gave you a gazillion advices today. You know, try one, try two, see what happens. Try to turn up. Svetlana looks like she's on a ride. She like at a, she looked like she was at an amusement park. Oh no, she's in the subway. I see. And her hair was just blowing, but it looked like she was, you know, try some of them, see what it does for your meditation, but it's going to be unique to you. You know, I can give you a bazillion advices, but you have to do it and then try it out. And then let me know like what cool things work for you to bring you out of dullness and what cool things work for you to like tone it down a little bit. Like just tone that color down a little bit, please. Right? Cool. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day and say goodbye to each other, please.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Tim. Have a good day.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias, maestro. Por
Thank you,
favor.
team.
Thank you so much.
Danke, Tim.
谢谢Tim老师，
Please keep on teaching.
谢谢 Tim 老师，晚安，Good night。
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.